This is a chance for us to speak the truth on what is happening in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And this is an exercise in patience, faced with interventions in some cases by Western countries, full sometimes in some cases of imperialism and the interference in domestic affairs of other countries, and colonial arrogance that we thought had disappeared from the Security Council. Politics of death. We've heard calls for the politics of death. Ladies and gentlemen, this last weekend there was a well-orchestrated operation to violate the sacred sovereignty of the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And our national Bolivarian armed forces, our police were able to contain it without using any kind of deadly force. And that is why you saw that on the two main bridges between Venezuela and Colombia in the northern department of Santander and in Tache, we saw tear gas used. We saw gradual methods used by our law enforcement. The aggression came from the Colombian side and not from our regime. Here, this is not the gangs of Maduro's government. These are Colombians or Venezuelans, we're not sure, but they are attacking our law enforcement personnel in Venezuela under the protection of the police of Colombia. And ladies and gentlemen, these men who used Molotov cocktail bombs set fire to the famous humanitarian trucks which came out in the press. And here we also have trucks. And let me tell you, when the truck was inspected, it turned out that there wasn't just food and medicines in the truck, but there was equipment for barricades. There was nails, chicken wire, and so on and so forth. And this is what is used by the opposition in Venezuela. So this is the evidence. We have video, and you can view them. This truck was burnt on the bridge, but we also have those who were injured, and most of those who were injured, unfortunately, the media did not report this, but most of them are soldiers, law enforcement personnel, policemen from our security forces in Venezuela. I have the report here. This is a bus on Venezuelan territory, but these thugs, bandits, are not Chavistas. They're from the Venezuelan opposition, as we saw in 2014 and 2017, and they left our country in flames over a period of 4 months in 2017, and there was no condemnation from any of those other countries. And here this is a bridge on the Colombian side, and this is Colombian migration protected by Colombian security forces. There they are. We also see the use of the Red Cross emblem without authorization from the Red Cross movement or federation or the international movement. And this was denounced by the Red Cross. This happened in Colombia. This is on the bridges, homemade bombs with gasoline from Venezuela, which was smuggled into Colombia. So that's the reality, unfortunately. We see our security forces, that's the Venezuelan barrier, and a truck was burnt here, and they are throwing bombs from that side where I'm pointing. But it's so easy to say that Maduro is massacring his people and is burning the trucks with humanitarian aid. And they even went so far as to say that we are in violation of the Geneva Convention on Humanitarian Law. Please, that's hypocrisy. This is what was in the truck. Nails, wire. When the security forces inspected it, this is what they found. This was to set up barricades, block the roads. And this is a last photograph. I'd like to show this to the representative of the United Kingdom. By coincidence, this is a warship just a few miles off one of the islands in the Caribbean. this arrived on Saturday. Why? This is something that I have to tell you is incredible, but as Mr. Elliot Abrams, as I said to Mr. Abrams at our last meeting here in New York, the coup failed. That was the last chapter in the coup on Saturday, and I can tell you, read my lips, it failed. And now is the time for us to return to sanity and to respect international law and respect Venezuela's constitution. We are waiting to see the members of the Venezuelan opposition, Mr. Guaidó or whoever else. They will decide who will be the one to sit down with the government, the constitutional government of Venezuela, and then among Venezuelans we can build our own solution without interference from anyone, much less the United States. The Security Council is not here to make war. The Security Council is not here to establish conditions for others to make war. The Security Council is not here to endorse violent breaches of the United Nations Charter. Rather, the Security Council is here to maintain international peace and security and to preserve future generations from the scourge of war. Save them from the scourge of war. Let's save Venezuela and this generation, because the threat is today. The threat of the scourge of war is here today, and we do so. We call on you. We propose, with all due respect, as the ambassador of Russian Federation did, with all due respect, we would demand, we call on the Security Council to come up with a resolution. And what are we asking for? The rejection of the threat or the use of force per se against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and to rule that out as an option once and for all, because Mr. Trump, Mr. Pence, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Pompeo, Mr. Marco Rubio, Guaidó, and Duque are putting this on the table. Look, here's Mr. Pence saying all options are on the table. And we have Mr. Bolton also saying the same thing, as is Mr. Rubio. Look at this. After 40 tweets against President Nicolas Maduro from Mr. Rubio, he's representing the United States people and the people of Florida. These are the values of the United States people? To call for the killing of a president, because in the context, obviously, this is what this picture means. This is what he does, and there are no recriminations or consequences for him. And the president of the National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, said that Saturday's events are compelling me to take a decision that we must keep all options on the table to ensure that our country is liberated. All the options. What is he saying? He's saying we want a military intervention against my own country. Probably doesn't have family or friends, because when the bombs fall in Venezuela, they will not differentiate between the Chavistas and non-Chavistas, who is rich, who is poor. And we have already seen this in Iraq. We have seen this in Afghanistan. We have also seen it in Libya. We have also seen it in Syria. How many countries have we seen this? Wherever the United States goes, they leave a humanitarian crisis there. And then who has to clean up that? Who is responsible for that humanitarian crisis? Mr. Maduro was saying that the United States destroys countries and invades them, saying that there are WMDs. Millions of people die, and they celebrate it. They see that they lynch a head of state such as Muammar Gaddafi, and some countries are supporting this. I have to say it openly. Mr. Bolton has said that it's because of the oil. He has said it on many occasions. And Mr. Trump said we have to come away with loot once we intervene. We can't just intervene and kill people and have political control over the government. No, we also have to make sure that we have land and resources, as they did in the past. But in the case of Venezuela, it's oil. Mr. Bolton has said United States companies will go and produce oil in Venezuela. Madam Bachelet, who I'll be meeting with soon, had to denounce it. How can we seek to militarily intervene in a country without trying to do anything before that. And I think there's time enough for an alternative solution. So there is the need for a resolution, a peaceful resolution. And I insist, how can we solve this situation? We can call it an institutional crisis. In our case, we can characterize it thusly. I would even go so far as to say that it is one of the 5 branches of government in Venezuela, and one is in conflict with us. And we are prepared to sit down and to come up with solutions with Mr. Guaidó and whoever else wishes to sit down with us, but they don't wish to sit down and talk to us. They say there's no time for dialogue. Mr. Maduro has to go. The regime has to change. There has to be an invasion of Venezuela. But there's no call on this Security Council, in the council or spokespersons, to say you have to sit down. And the spirit of that group is to defend this charter, peace and security and the principles of the United Nations Charter, but not to defend Venezuela. But in this case, to defend Venezuela. But if it's Nicaragua tomorrow, then defend Nicaragua. But if for whatever reason it's in Indonesia tomorrow, then protect Indonesia, but use and recover the principles of this charter. And in the non-aligned movement, we agree that there is a need to put a stop to this movement. In a meeting of the NAM, the ambassador of South Africa said that today it's Venezuela, but who will it be tomorrow? It can be any of us. So if we don't put a stop to this madness that is being generated by the United States today and its claims, and Mr. Representative of Germany, the Bundestag says, when asked about the recognition of the alleged government of Mr. Guaidó, therefore there are important reasons to hold the view that the recognition of an interim president means interference in the domestic affairs of our states, and this is unlawful intervention, and this is inappropriate. I thank His Excellency Jorge